My name's Alan Moore. I'm the author of a book called No Straight Lines, Making Sense of Our Non-Linear World, and my work and interest is all about innovation and transformation, how organisations and businesses are able to transform themselves when it's not business as usual, which it quite obviously isn't at the moment. So I talk about the fact that we have up until this point lived in what I call a linear world, which has a particular kind of philosophy and mindset and moves in a certain type of direction. And that it's really in broadcast mode, if we were talking about it from a sort of media and communications perspective, where actually what we're seeing is, as part of this really massive communications revolution, that communication, as we all know, is really two-way. And I talk about non-linearity as a way of representing what happens when communication technologies connect up to each other, when that two-way conversation can happen independently of those organisations, I think, that currently they are dominant in the marketplace, and when they don't give value to the marketplace or to society. And we could be talking, you know, from a commercial perspective or from a political perspective, it doesn't matter. Then when those institutions fail, people learn to get what they need from each other. And that is what we're seeing with this extraordinary explosion of innovation and entrepreneurship at the moment. People unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the current offerings that they're having, whether that's in, you know, broadcast media, whether that's in publishing, whatever, are going away and using digital communication technologies to completely reinvent entire industries. And they're not asking anyone's permission to do that. They're just getting on with it, which is why I always say disruption always comes from the edge. It never comes from the centre. And those that are being disrupted are the ones then that can't quite understand what's happening because they can't believe it's happening to them. You know, Nokia is a great example of a company that had 40% 40% market share, and never thought that actually a little software company from the west coast of America called Apple could actually come along and disrupt their business. I think that one has the potential to create much better services, much better products, services and products which are more relevant and more meaningful for people. And the reality is that I like to say that better, much better, doesn't necessarily have to cost the earth. So, you know, we can go from a world where this was the only way we could create something in a linear way that was inflexible and immovable, into actually a world where actually we can be fleet of foot, we can be adaptive, we can create entirely different types of organisations and business models. And actually, we don't have to be stuck with those for the next sort of 10 years of our lives. And we can constantly go back and readapt and reevaluate those. And I think that is the opportunity. But it's a cultural shift in mindset. So what happens, of course, then is I go back to this idea of relevance. If you become irrelevant, then you become redundant. And I talk about that we are creating new tools for a new economy. And if you're not prepared to embrace and understand how those tools are working and how you can use them and deploy them, then ultimately the disruption will be so great that you will go out of business. You know, you won't exist. Nothing is ever constant. You know, we live in a dynamic, constantly evolving world and universe. And so it's almost insane to think that a business or an industry can exist within its current form and design forever. It doesn't happen. So we have to be on a journey of constant evolution, a constant reassessing of where we are we relevant in the marketplace, is our business model relevant for the world that we live in today? And I talk about this idea that we have to be, you know, have business models which are commercially relevant to the world we live in today. We have to be culturally relevant to the way that we are connecting and offering value to people. We have to think about actually not as people as consumers that we lock down, that we own, because actually, you know, we are all sovereign people rather than thinking about people as a community. And also actually about connectivity. How in this world today can we meaningfully connect to those people, and how can we meaningfully help people connect to each other? because it's actually when you get those great kind of flows of communication is when the real value starts to flow. Really start to understand the power and potential of a world designed around what I call pull rather than push. You know, the idea that, you know, we lived in a world where actually we could push messages out to people, onto people, the idea that we could dominate people, the idea that we could own. In a way, when I was working on creating brands and branding, you know, we talked about the idea of being so attractive to people, and that there would be a desirability around a brand that one created almost as a facade, and actually you would desire to be part of that. In today's world, people are looking for authentic engagement. They're looking for meaningful engagement. They're looking for people to help them be life enabling or life simplifying or navigational, help me navigate through the complexity of my life. So the role of marketing and business is changing into a much more services orientated model. And I think that if they start to understand those sorts of philosophical principles, then it starts to change the way that perhaps they think about marketing. Data is very important. I mean, data is, we've always sort of existed in a world where data's played an important role. I mean, marketeers have always looked at data, but we're using data in much, much more creative and innovative ways. But the idea is that that you lock down that data and that you own that data, I think is a fallacy. I think the idea of actually how can that data become an asset where mutuality is a business strategy makes much more sense to me.